This is my true story. I came home from work excited to hold my newborn son for the first time that day. I walked into the nursery and reached for him in his crib with all the love a father feels. My wife's hand shot out, blocking me from touching him. She said, "Do not touch my baby, and you are not his real father." Then she laughed in my face. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I could not believe what I was hearing. But I did not collapse. I made one phone call that destroyed her life completely. Before I tell you, tell us where you are watching from and subscribe. I had been at work all day excited to get home to see my newborn son. My wife had given birth just 3 days earlier, and we had brought the baby home from the hospital yesterday. I was still adjusting to being a father, but I was filled with joy and excitement about this new chapter of our lives. I had spent the past 9 months preparing for this moment. I had painted the nursery and assembled the crib and bought everything a baby could possibly need. I had been at every doctor appointment supporting my wife through her pregnancy. I walked through the front door that evening and immediately went upstairs to the nursery. I could hear the baby making soft sounds from his crib. My heart swelled with love and pride. This was my son. This was the child my wife and I had created together. I walked into the nursery quietly, not wanting to startle him if he was sleeping. I approached the crib and looked down at this tiny, perfect human being. I reached down to pick him up, wanting to hold him and feel that connection between father and son. But before my hands could touch him, my wife's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist hard. She had been sitting in the rocking chair in the corner, and I had not seen her there. She stood up quickly and positioned herself between me and the crib. Her grip on my wrist was tight, almost painful. I looked at her confused about why she was stopping me from holding my own son. Her face had an expression I had never seen before. It was cold and cruel and triumphant. She said, "Do not touch my baby." The words came out sharp and cutting. She emphasized the word "my," like she was claiming sole ownership of the child. I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "He is our baby." I tried to reach for him again, but she pushed my hand away roughly. She said, "No, he is my baby." She said, "You are not his real father." The words hung in the air between us. I could not process what she was saying. It made no sense. Of course I was his father. I was her husband. We had been trying to have a baby. She had been pregnant for 9 months, and I had been there through all of it. Then she laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or an awkward laugh. It was a cruel, triumphant sound that echoed through the small nursery. She laughed like she had just told the funniest joke in the world. She laughed like my pain and confusion were entertaining to her. The sound of her laughter was worse than her words. It was the sound of someone who had been hiding something terrible and was now enjoying revealing it. It was the sound of pure cruelty. My world stopped spinning in that moment. Everything I thought I knew about my life collapsed. The words she had spoken crashed into my chest like a wrecking ball, destroying everything in their path. "You are not his real father." The words played over and over in my mind. My legs felt weak beneath me. I grabbed the edge of the crib to steady myself. I looked at my wife standing there blocking me from the baby. I looked at the baby lying in the crib, completely unaware of what was happening. I looked back at my wife's face with that cruel smile. I could not breathe. My chest felt tight like someone was squeezing my lungs. I could not think clearly. My mind was racing, trying to understand what was happening. How could I not be his father? I was her husband. We lived together. We slept together. She had been pregnant, and I had assumed the baby was mine because why would I think otherwise? But she was telling me now that I was wrong. She was telling me the baby was not mine, and she was laughing about it. I felt like the floor was disappearing beneath me. Everything I had believed about my marriage and my family was suddenly revealed to be a lie. The past 9 months of excitement and preparation had been based on a false assumption. I had been celebrating becoming a father, while my wife knew the entire time that the child was not mine. She had let me believe the lie. She had watched me prepare the nursery and attend doctor appointments and feel joy about becoming a father. And now she was laughing as she destroyed that joy with a few cruel words. I managed to find my voice and whispered, "What are you saying?" My legs were going weak beneath me. but I forced myself to stay standing. I needed to hear her explain what she meant. I needed to understand what was happening. She looked at me with a smile that had venom in it. It was an expression I had never seen on her face before. This was not the woman I thought I had married. This was someone else entirely, someone cruel and cold and capable of terrible things. She said exactly what you heard. She spoke slowly, like she was explaining something to a child. She said that baby is not yours. She said he never was. She paused to let those words sink in. Then she continued. She said I have been with someone else the whole time. She said I have been with my real partner. She said the baby is his. She said he is the man I actually love. Every word she spoke was designed to hurt me as much as possible. She was not confessing out of guilt or remorse. She was confessing because she wanted to see my pain. I could not breathe. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and knocked all the air out of my lungs. I tried to process what she was telling me. She had been having an affair during our entire marriage. She had gotten pregnant by another man. She had let me believe the baby was mine for 9 months. She had let me prepare to be a father, knowing the child was not mine. She had watched me paint the nursery and buy baby clothes and attend doctor appointments, all while knowing I was being deceived. I could not think clearly. My mind was spinning, trying to understand how this was possible. When had she been seeing this other man? How had I not known? How had she hidden an entire relationship from me? How had she carried another man's child while living with me as my wife? The questions flooded my brain, but I could not form words to ask them. I just stood there staring at her, trying to make sense of something that made no sense. She stood there with her arms crossed, looking satisfied with herself. She looked like someone who had just won a game. She looked proud of what she had done. There was no guilt in her eyes. There was no remorse on her face. She looked at me like I was stupid for not figuring it out sooner. She looked at me like I deserved this for being too trusting and too blind to see what was happening under my own roof. I whispered, "How long?" She said the whole time. She said she had been with this other man since before we got married. She said she had never stopped seeing him. She said she had been living a double life for years. She said I was just too stupid to notice. She said while I was at work, she was with him. She said while I thought we were building a family together, she was building a real family with someone else. She said I was never part of her real life. I was just a convenience, a paycheck, a cover story. I tried to understand why she had married me if she loved someone else. I asked her why she went through with the wedding, why she stayed married to me, why she let me believe the baby was mine. She said she needed financial security. She said her real partner could not provide the lifestyle she wanted. She said I had a good job and a nice house. She said marrying me gave her stability while she continued her real relationship on the side. She said I was useful to her. That was the only reason she had married me and stayed with me. The woman I had married did not exist. The person standing in front of me was a stranger who had been pretending to be my wife. She had been acting out a role while living her real life somewhere else with someone else. The child I thought was my son was another man's baby. The family I thought we had built was a grotesque lie told to my face every single day for years. And now she was laughing about it. She was enjoying watching me realize how completely I had been fooled and used and betrayed. My legs gave out and I fell to my knees right there in the nursery. The weight of what she had told me was too much to bear standing up. 18 months of excitement and preparation for becoming a father were crumbling into ash and betrayal. 18 months of believing I was building a family with the woman I loved were revealed to be based on lies. I had been living in a false reality while my wife lived her real life with another man. The baby in the crib that I thought was my son belonged to someone else. Everything I believed about my life was wrong. I knelt there on the floor feeling like my chest was caving in. I could not breathe properly. My vision was blurred with tears. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was having a heart attack or a panic attack or both. The pain was physical and emotional at the same time. My wife stood over me with her arms crossed, watching me break apart. She had no remorse in her eyes. She looked at me like watching me collapse was entertainment. She looked satisfied, like this was the reaction she had been hoping for. I looked up at her from my position on the floor. I saw the cruelty in her face. I saw the satisfaction she was getting from my pain, and something shifted inside me. Something hardened in the middle of my grief. There was a core of steel that formed in that moment. A part of me that refused to let her destroy me completely. A part of me that said I would not stay broken. A part of me that said she would pay for what she had done. I stopped crying. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. I wiped the tears from my face. I stood up slowly, using the crib to pull myself to my feet. My wife watched me stand with a look of surprise. She had expected me to stay on the floor, broken and defeated. She had expected me to beg or plead or fall apart completely. But I was not going to give her that satisfaction. I was not going to let her see me destroyed. I looked at her dead in the eyes. I did not say anything at first. I just looked at her with a cold, steady gaze. I saw the surprise in her face turn to uncertainty. She had not expected this reaction. She had expected me to collapse and stay collapsed. But I was standing now, and the look on my face was not broken. It was hard. It was determined. It was the look of someone who was about to take action. I pulled my phone out of my pocket slowly. She watched me do this with growing concern. She said, "What are you doing?" I did not answer her. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I found the number I was looking for. My attorney. I had used him a few years ago for a business matter and still had his number saved. I pressed call. The phone started ringing. My wife said, "What are you doing, and who are you calling?" Her voice had lost some of its confidence. She was starting to realize this was not going the way she had planned. My attorney answered after 3 rings. I said, "I need you to file for divorce immediately." My wife's face went pale. I put the phone on speaker so she could hear everything I was saying. I said my wife just confessed to having an affair, and the baby she just gave birth to is not mine. I said I need you to file for fraud and adultery. I said I want emergency DNA testing ordered. I said I want all joint accounts frozen immediately. I said I also need you to investigate financial irregularities because I think she has been stealing from me. I watched her confident smile crack and crumble as she realized what was happening. I was not collapsing. I was mobilizing. I was taking action. Her laughter stopped. The cruel satisfaction disappeared from her face. She started to look worried. She started to look scared. My lawyer said on the phone, "I will have papers filed within the hour." He said he would get everything started immediately. I said thank you and hung up. I looked at my wife and said quietly, "Your life is over." Then I walked out of the nursery, leaving her standing there with her baby and her shattered plans. My attorney was extremely efficient and moved faster than I thought possible. Within 2 hours of my phone call from the nursery, he had already filed emergency motions with the family court. He filed for immediate divorce citing adultery and fraud. He filed for emergency DNA testing to prove the child was not mine. He filed to freeze all joint bank accounts pending investigation of financial irregularities. He filed for exclusive use of the marital home, which meant my wife would have to leave. Everything happened so quickly that my wife did not have time to prepare or respond. I left the house that night and stayed at a hotel. I could not be in the same space as her after what she had revealed. I needed distance to think and process. My attorney called me at the hotel and explained everything he had filed. He said the judge had granted the emergency motions because of the severity of the allegations. The joint accounts were frozen effective immediately, which meant my wife could not access any money. The DNA testing was ordered and would happen within days. My wife was served with papers that same night, requiring her to vacate the house within 48 hours. My attorney asked me detailed questions about our finances. He asked if I had noticed any unusual spending or transfers. I told him my wife had been in charge of managing our household accounts during her pregnancy. I had been working long hours and trusted her to handle the finances. She had told me she was setting up accounts for the baby's future. She said she was putting money aside for college and medical expenses. She said she was being responsible and planning ahead. I had believed her and never questioned the transfers or the amounts. My attorney said he would bring in a forensic accountant to examine all our financial records. He said if my wife had been stealing money, we would find it. He said fraud cases like this often involved financial theft in addition to the emotional betrayal. He said people who are capable of lying about paternity are often capable of stealing money as well. He said we needed to move quickly before my wife had a chance to hide assets or transfer money to accounts we did not know about. The DNA test was conducted 3 days after my wife's confession in the nursery. A court-appointed medical professional came to collect samples from me, from my wife, and from the baby. The process was quick and clinical. My wife tried to refuse to participate, but the court order required her cooperation. She looked angry and scared during the sample collection. She knew what the results would show. She knew the test would prove she had been lying. But she had no choice except to comply with the court order. The results came back 2 days later. I was at my attorney's office when he received the lab report. He opened it and read through the technical language. Then he looked up at me and said, 0% probability of paternity. The baby was definitely not mine. The test made it official and undeniable. My wife could not claim I was mistaken or that she had been confused. The science proved she had lied. The child I had spent 9 months preparing to raise was another man's son. I felt a strange mix of emotions when I heard the results. Part of me had known the truth from the moment my wife confessed in the nursery. But having scientific proof made it real in a different way. This was not just her word against mine. This was objective evidence that our entire marriage had been based on deception. The baby shower I had hosted for friends and family had been a celebration of another man's child. The nursery I had painted had been for someone else's son. Every moment of excitement I had felt during the pregnancy had been based on a lie. My attorney said the DNA results gave us extremely strong grounds for the divorce and for proving fraud. He said my wife would have no defense against the evidence. He said we could now move forward aggressively with both the divorce proceedings and the investigation into financial theft. He said my wife's life was about to get much worse as we uncovered the full extent of what she had done. The court-ordered DNA test came back 3 days later. I was at my attorney's office when he received the lab report. He opened the envelope and pulled out the official document with the test results. He read through the technical language and medical terminology. Then he looked up at me with a serious expression and said the results show 0% probability of paternity. He said, according to the DNA analysis, there was absolutely no biological relationship between me and the baby. The child was definitely not mine. I sat there in the attorney's office staring at the paper in front of me. The scientific evidence was clear and undeniable. 0% probability of paternity. Those words meant everything my wife had told me in the nursery was true. The baby I had been preparing to raise for 9 months was another man's son. The child I had been excited to meet and hold and love was not my child. The DNA test made it official in a way that could not be disputed or explained away. I thought about the baby shower I had hosted at our house 2 months before the birth. I had invited friends and family and co-workers. Everyone had brought gifts and congratulated me on becoming a father. I had felt so proud and happy that day. I had made a speech thanking everyone for coming and for supporting us as we started our family. I had talked about how excited I was to meet my son. Everyone had celebrated with me. But the whole time I was celebrating a lie. The baby everyone was bringing gifts for was not mine. My wife knew it and let me throw that party anyway. I thought about the nursery I had painted. I had spent an entire weekend carefully painting the walls a soft blue color. I had assembled the crib and the changing table. I had hung decorations and organized baby clothes in the dresser. I had created that space with love and excitement, thinking I was preparing a room for my son. But I was actually preparing a room for another man's child, while my wife watched me work and said nothing. She let me pour my heart into creating that nursery, knowing the baby would never truly be mine. I thought about all the doctor appointments I had attended during the pregnancy. I had taken time off work to go with my wife to ultrasounds and checkups. I had held her hand and looked at the screen showing the baby growing inside her. I had heard the heartbeat and seen the tiny hands and feet forming. The doctors and nurses had congratulated me and talked to me about being a father. My wife had let me participate in all of it, knowing the baby was not mine. She had let me bond with a child that belonged to someone else. The DNA test confirmed what I had known in my heart from the moment my wife laughed at me in the nursery. But seeing it in writing made it real in a different way. This was not just my wife's word. This was science. This was objective truth that could be presented in court. My wife could not claim she had been mistaken or confused. She could not say I had misunderstood her. The DNA evidence proved beyond any doubt that she had lied to me for 9 months about whose child she was carrying. My attorney said the DNA results were devastating for my wife's position in the divorce. He said this level of fraud and deception would work strongly in my favor. He said judges did not look kindly on people who deliberately deceived their spouses about paternity. He said combined with the evidence of financial theft, we were building an extremely strong case. He said my wife would be lucky to get anything from the divorce after what she had done. But the DNA test did more than just confirm paternity. It destroyed something deeper inside me. My wife had not just lied about whose baby it was. She had destroyed my trust in reality itself. I had believed I was living one life when actually I was living in a completely false version of reality that my wife had constructed. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage and my family had been a lie. The DNA test proved that I could not trust my own perceptions. I could not trust what people told me. I could not trust that what I was experiencing was real. My wife had shattered my ability to believe in anything. My attorney's forensic accountant spent 2 weeks examining every financial record from our marriage. Bank statements, credit card records, investment accounts, and tax documents were all reviewed in detail. What the accountant discovered was shocking, even after everything I had already learned about my wife's betrayal. The financial theft was systematic and extensive. It had been going on for the entire 18 months of her pregnancy. Every month she had been transferring money out of our accounts using various excuses and cover stories. The accountant found that my wife had been draining our joint accounts, claiming the money was for the baby's future. She had told me she was setting up college funds and trust accounts and medical savings accounts. She said she wanted our son to have financial security from the moment he was born. She showed me paperwork that looked official and legitimate. I had trusted her completely and never questioned the transfers. I had been proud that she was thinking ahead and planning for our child's future. But none of those accounts existed. The money had been going somewhere else entirely. Over 18 months, my wife had transferred almost $2 million from our accounts. The money came from our joint savings, from my business accounts that she had access to, and from investment accounts we had built together. She had been strategic about the amounts and timing. She never took so much at once that it would trigger immediate suspicion. She spread the transfers over many months, making each one seem reasonable. She always had an explanation ready if I asked about the account balances. The forensic accountant traced where the money had gone. My wife had opened a secret joint account with her affair partner. The account was in both their names. Every dollar she stole from me was deposited into that account. The account records showed that my wife and her partner had been using my money to fund their real life together. They had rented an apartment together. They had bought furniture and appliances and everything needed to set up a home. They had gone on vacations together. They had been living as a couple using money stolen from me. The baby had been planned with him, not with me. The forensic accountant found records showing my wife and her partner had been discussing having a baby for over a year before she got pregnant. They had planned the pregnancy together. The medical expenses and baby items had all been purchased with my stolen money. The nursery furniture that I thought I was buying for my son had actually been paid for with funds she transferred from my accounts. Every single dollar spent on the baby had come from me, even though the baby was not mine. I looked at the financial records spread across my attorney's desk and felt sick. $2 million. That was how much she had stolen while pretending to be my loving wife and the mother of my child. That was how much she had taken while I worked long hours to provide for what I thought was my family. I had been working to support her affair and her real family while she laughed at me behind my back. I had been the financial resource she exploited while building a life with another man. Every dollar that was supposed to be for my son's future had actually been funding their real family while I played the fool. I had believed I was being a responsible father preparing for my child's needs. I had believed the college fund and trust accounts were real. I had believed my wife when she said she was planning ahead for our baby. But it was all lies. Every transfer was theft. Every account she claimed to open was fake. Every dollar went to fund her secret life with her real partner and their planned baby. My attorney said this was clear-cut fraud and theft. He said my wife had systematically stolen a massive amount of money using false pretenses. She had claimed the money was for our baby's future when actually she was using it to fund her affair and her secret life. He said this was not just a civil matter for the divorce. This was criminal. He said we needed to report this to the police immediately. He said my wife could face criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. The forensic accountant's report documented everything, and the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The investigation into my wife's financial theft led to discoveries about the full extent of her double life. My attorney hired a private investigator to gather information about my wife's affair partner and their relationship. What the investigator uncovered showed that my wife had been living a complete separate existence that I knew nothing about. She had not just been having an affair. She had been maintaining an entire second household and second identity while pretending to be my wife. The investigator found that my wife had been renting an apartment with her affair partner for over 3 years. The apartment was across town in a neighborhood I rarely visited. She had been splitting her time between our house and the apartment. When I thought she was out running errands or meeting friends or attending appointments, she was actually at the apartment with him. She had created elaborate cover stories and schedules that allowed her to disappear for hours at a time without raising my suspicion. The investigator took photographs of the apartment building and obtained records showing my wife's name on the lease, along with her partner's name. He interviewed neighbors who confirmed that my wife and a man had been living there together for years. The neighbors said they had seen my wife there regularly. They had seen her coming and going at all hours. They had assumed she and the man were a married couple living together. They had no idea she had a husband and another home across town. The investigator also documented that my wife had used my stolen money to furnish the apartment. Bank records showed purchases of furniture, appliances, decorations, and household items that I had never seen. She had been creating a home with her affair partner using money taken from my accounts. While I thought we were saving for our future and preparing for our baby, she was actually building a completely separate life with another man. She was using my money to create the home she really wanted with the person she really loved. The baby had been planned with him, not with me. I was just the financial resource. I was just the bank account to exploit. I was just the sucker who would pay for another man's child while she laughed at my ignorance. My wife and her partner had been actively trying to get pregnant together. They wanted to start a family. When she got pregnant, she was excited because this was what they had planned. But she also saw an opportunity to use me to pay for everything. If she could convince me the baby was mine, I would cover all the expenses while she and her partner raised their child. My wife had been spending most of her time at the apartment during her pregnancy. She had been living there with her partner while making brief appearances at our house to maintain the illusion of our marriage. She would come home for dinner or to sleep a few nights a week. She would text me during the day pretending to be out shopping or at doctor appointments. But actually, she was at the apartment with him living her real life, while I believed everything was normal in our marriage. The investigator found that my wife had told her partner I was just a financial arrangement. She told him I was someone who provided stability and money, but that she did not love me. She told him I was not part of her real life. She told him they were the real couple, and I was just a convenience she was using. Her partner believed my wife was trapped in a practical marriage and that they were her true love. He had no idea she had been lying and stealing from me. Everything I thought I knew about my wife's daily life during the pregnancy had been false. The doctor appointments she said she attended alone because I was working were actually attended with her partner. The baby shower I hosted at our house was preceded by another baby shower at the apartment with her partner's friends and family. The hospital bag I helped her pack was for show. She had another bag packed at the apartment. When she went into labor, she called her partner first, not me. I only found out she was in labor hours later. My wife had been living a complete double life for years. She had 2 homes, 2 identities, 2 sets of plans and dreams. The version of herself she showed me was fake. The real her was the person who lived in that apartment with her partner and planned a baby with him while stealing my money to pay for everything. I was never part of her real life. I was just the fool she used. Armed with all the evidence from the forensic accountant and the private investigator, I filed criminal charges against my wife. My attorney worked with the police to build a case for fraud, embezzlement, and theft. The evidence was overwhelming. We had bank records showing $2 million transferred from my accounts to the secret account she shared with her affair partner. We had documentation that she had lied about the purpose of the transfers. We had proof that she had used the stolen money to fund a separate household and lifestyle. The police moved quickly to investigate once they saw the evidence. My wife was arrested at the apartment she shared with her partner. Police arrived early one morning with a warrant. They took her into custody and charged her with multiple felonies, including grand theft, fraud, and embezzlement. The news of her arrest shocked everyone who knew us. Friends and family could not believe that the woman who seemed so devoted to preparing for motherhood was actually a criminal who had been stealing millions. Her mugshot appeared in local news coverage about the case. Her reputation was destroyed overnight. Her affair partner abandoned her immediately when the legal trouble started. The private investigator discovered that her partner had believed my wife was single and wealthy. She had lied to him just like she lied to me. She told him she had money from a family inheritance and from successful investments. He had no idea that the money came from stealing from her actual husband. He had no idea I even existed until the police showed up to arrest her. When he learned the truth about where the money came from and that she was married, he wanted nothing to do with her. Her partner also faced potential legal trouble for receiving stolen money. Even though he claimed he did not know the money was stolen, the bank records showed he had benefited from it. The apartment lease was in his name. Furniture and expenses were paid from the joint account containing my stolen money. My attorney filed a civil lawsuit against him to recover funds. Her partner hired his own lawyer and immediately cooperated with prosecutors. He gave statements and testimony about my wife's deception. He admitted she had lied to him about everything. He threw her under the bus completely to protect himself from criminal charges. My wife tried to get bail, but the judge denied it. The amount of money involved and the systematic nature of the theft made her a flight risk. She had already demonstrated she was capable of maintaining elaborate lies and secret lives. The judge said there was too much risk she would disappear if released. She remained in custody while awaiting trial. Her baby was placed with her partner since DNA testing proved he was the biological father. My wife lost custody and could only see the baby during supervised visits. The courts froze every account my wife had access to. They seized assets that had been purchased with my stolen money, including furniture from the apartment and jewelry and other items. Everything was cataloged and valued. My attorney filed claims to recover the $2 million plus additional damages for emotional distress and fraud. The legal system moved methodically to unravel everything my wife had built with my stolen money. My wife faced serious criminal penalties. The prosecutor said grand theft and embezzlement involving $2 million carried potential prison time of 5 to 10 years. The fraud charges added additional years. My wife's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor was not interested in being lenient. The case was too egregious. The theft had been too systematic and calculated. The lies had been too extensive. My wife was looking at years in prison and complete financial ruin. She also faced the divorce proceedings, which were moving forward separately from the criminal case. My attorney filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. The DNA evidence proved the child was not mine. The financial evidence proved systematic theft. My wife had no defense and no grounds to contest anything. Her attorney advised her to agree to whatever terms I wanted because fighting would only make things worse. She had no money to pay legal fees since all accounts were frozen. She had no credibility since she had been proven to be a liar and a thief. She was facing criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and complete financial ruin. The courts had frozen every account, seized assets purchased with my stolen money, and left her with nothing but legal bills she could not pay. The divorce hearing took place 3 months after my wife's arrest. She was brought to court from jail in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. She looked completely different from the confident woman who had laughed at me in the nursery. She looked defeated and broken. She had lost weight and her hair was unkempt. She would not make eye contact with me. She sat at her attorney's table with her head down while the judge reviewed the evidence in our case. The judge spent over an hour reading through the documentation my attorney had submitted. Bank records showing $2 million in theft. DNA evidence proving the baby was not mine. Testimony from the private investigator documenting her double life. Statements from her affair partner describing how she had lied to everyone. The evidence was presented in meticulous detail. Every lie my wife told was exposed. Every dollar she stole was documented. Every moment of her betrayal was laid out for the court to see. My wife's attorney tried to argue that she deserved some consideration. He said she was a new mother and that separating her from her baby was cruel. He tried to claim that the financial transfers were misunderstandings rather than theft. He tried to suggest that the divorce settlement should include some provision for her since she had no income and no resources. But every argument fell flat when confronted with the overwhelming evidence of what she had done. The most shocking moment came when my wife's attorney tried to claim I owed child support despite the DNA evidence proving the baby was not mine. He argued that I had acted as a father during the pregnancy and therefore had some financial responsibility. He said I had attended doctor appointments and prepared a nursery and hosted a baby shower. He said those actions created a relationship that required financial support. The argument was desperate and absurd, but he made it anyway because he had nothing else to argue. The judge's face hardened when he heard this argument. He looked at my wife with clear disgust. He said, "Let me make sure I understand what you are claiming." He said, "You are telling this court that a man who was systematically defrauded and stolen from should now pay child support for a baby that DNA proves is not his." He said, "You are claiming that because he was a good husband who supported what he believed was his pregnant wife, he now owes money to the woman who betrayed him." The judge's tone made it clear what he thought of this ridiculous claim. The judge addressed my wife directly. He said, "You stole $2 million from this man while carrying another man's child and laughing in his face." He said, "You maintained a secret apartment and a secret life funded entirely by money stolen from your husband." He said, "You lied to everyone, including your affair partner, about where the money came from." He said, "You showed no remorse and actually laughed when you revealed your betrayal." He said, "Your behavior represents some of the most calculated and cruel deception he had seen in his years on the bench." The judge said, "You will be lucky if you do not spend a significant portion of your life in prison." He said, "The criminal charges against you are serious and the evidence is overwhelming." He said, "This court will not reward your fraud by granting you anything from the divorce." The judge then issued his ruling. He awarded me everything. The house was mine. All remaining assets were mine. All joint accounts, once unfrozen, would be mine. He also issued a judgment against my wife for the full $2 million she had stolen, plus additional damages for fraud and emotional distress. The judgment meant my wife would owe me over $3 million when everything was calculated. Even after she served her prison sentence, she would emerge with crushing debt that would follow her for the rest of her life. She would never be able to discharge it in bankruptcy. It would haunt her forever. She sat at the defendant's table crying as the judge read his ruling. She finally understood that her life was truly over. The confident woman who laughed at me in the nursery was gone. All that remained was a criminal facing prison time and financial ruin with no way out and no one to help her. The judge awarded me everything, including the house, all accounts, and a judgment against her for the stolen $2 million plus damages. My wife lost everything in the end. She lost her affair partner, who abandoned her the moment legal trouble appeared. She lost her freedom when she was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and theft. She lost custody of her baby, who was being raised by his biological father without her involvement. She lost any claim to money or assets from our marriage. She emerged from divorce court with nothing but debt and criminal convictions. Her life was in ruins, and she had no one to blame but herself. The criminal trial happened 4 months after the divorce hearing. The prosecution presented all the evidence of systematic theft and fraud. Bank records, testimony from forensic accountants, statements from her affair partner, and my own testimony about how she had deceived me. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in state prison with no possibility of early release. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $2 million plus court costs and fees. My wife was taken directly from sentencing to begin serving her time. She would spend the next 5 years behind bars. By the time she got out, her son would be 5 years old and would barely know her. Her affair partner had already moved on and started dating someone else. He had full custody of the baby and had made it clear my wife would not be welcome in their lives even after prison. She had destroyed every relationship and every opportunity through her lies and greed. She was broke and would remain broke for the foreseeable future. The judgment against her for $3 million would follow her forever. Any money she earned after prison would be garnished to pay the debt. Any assets she tried to accumulate could be seized. She would spend the rest of her life under the shadow of what she had done. No one would trust her. No one would hire her for any job requiring financial responsibility. Her criminal record would make employment difficult. Her future was bleak and hopeless. Friends and family had abandoned her completely. When the truth came out about what she had done, everyone who knew her was shocked and disgusted. People who attended our baby shower felt betrayed and used. They had brought gifts and celebrated what they thought was a happy occasion. But they had actually been participating in an elaborate fraud. People who had supported her during the pregnancy felt foolish for believing her lies. No one wanted anything to do with her anymore. She was facing 5 years in prison for theft and fraud, broke and abandoned by everyone she had manipulated. But despite everything my wife had done to me, there was one thing I could not shake. Part of me still grieved for that baby. The innocent child caught in his mother's web of lies had done nothing wrong. I had spent 9 months preparing to be his father. I had felt love for him, even though he was not mine biologically. I had imagined our future together. When my wife's betrayal was revealed, those feelings did not just disappear. Part of me still felt loss for the relationship that never was. I would have loved that baby if my wife had been honest with me, if she had told me from the beginning that she was pregnant with another man's child and asked if I would help raise him. I might have said yes. I might have been willing to be a father to a child who needed one. But she did not give me that choice. She chose cruelty and theft and deception instead of honesty. She chose to destroy me rather than trust me with the truth. Her choices meant I could never have a relationship with that baby, even though part of me wished things had been different. My wife said, "Do not touch my baby because you are not the real father." She laughed in my face when she said it. She thought she had won some kind of victory by hurting me so deeply. But one phone call later, she lost everything while I rebuilt my life from the ashes of her betrayal. She lost her partner, her money, her freedom, and her credibility. Her laughter died fast when she realized the man she thought she had broken was actually the one who ended her. She thought I would collapse, but instead, I made one call, and her entire life was ruined. She is facing prison now, and her laughter died very fast.